made available, and also very supportive of moving all the meters to credit cards as soon as possible.
Thanks, Councilman.
Thank you.
I have a question. You've said in the cost of implementing this, you're going to need personnel. I don't remember how many new parking meters you need. Did you have an estimate?
Approximately 600 new meters to fill out the zones, because we can't do variable rate pricing unless we have the credit card meters in those zones.
And to upgrade the software so we can do credit, or are you anticipating when they arrive, the new ones, they'll be credit card ready?
Yes, they'll be ready to go, and we have the software already to do this.
And how soon do you plan to do all of that, once approval's gained?
As part of our phase 2, we would implement the demand-based pricing in October, and we'll be ready to go. We've already contacted the vendor. They've assured us that they have the meters in stock that they can deliver within our time frames. So we will be ready in October.
Okay, having that all set in place, is that based on the $6 an hour maximum? I just want to make sure that you're projecting the city gets extra revenue, but you're tagging on quite a bit of expenses. And it sounds like me, you're upfronting the expenses. So I just want a comfort level here.
Sure. Mr. Chairman and Councilwoman Williams, the cost for the meters is included in the city's capital improvement program. It's one-time costs that we have budgeted for capital funds. So it's listed in your report as an asterisk in that chart, but the revenue from the meters is not going to pay for the capital cost of the meters. The expenses that we need to net out from that and make balance are the enforcement staff and the parking manager. So that's the critical, because that's an ongoing expense as well. And we can't really expand hours and particularly expand hours and days without having some additional enforcement, which, as you know, our enforcement is not very robust today.
And when you say, how many people do you anticipate?
Mr. Chairman and Councilwoman Williams, currently we have a person in our department that has basically a third of the time that's working on the parking meter and a parking meter program. And then with the police enforcement is basically there's about 4 people that work under the police department, and so we would be looking at gradually increasing that amount of people to enforce the expanded version that we have for phase 2.
You have a number of positions.
And
We have other, I'm sorry, we have other.
You have the numbers, right, of how many positions you're recommending adding?
Correct.
For the enforcement?
For enforcement, we're looking at adding an additional 4 parking assistants to cover the additional hours of enforcement. So they would essentially
need a vehicle?
Probably.
And so what do you anticipate the annual cost of that will be?
I know the police department have been working through that, and with the citations that they write, a lot of the costs for those positions are really offset by the revenue that they generate with the additional citations.
Madam Chair, subcommittee members, if you turn to page 17 in your packet, there's a chart which shows the operating cost. And for 13-14, it's not a full year of cost. It's $635,000. And I'm sorry, for 14-15, it's $868,000. And so it's an annual about $1 million cost for basically the staffing of this. The meters are an extra $550,000 total that's programmed in the CIP.
So PD has to absorb the cost of theirs, or you pay it out of this money?
No, we would pay it out of the revenue from the meters. So we have estimated annual revenue of
$1 million to $2 million.
yeah, but the actual revenue is $3 to $3.5 million. If you net out that $1 million, then you end up with $1 million to $2 million. That's what that chart is showing is the potential revenue, potential cost, and then the net.
Yeah, the chart
if you-
doesn't explain how many people
Sorry, yeah.
that you're adding in.
So that's what that $1 million roughly is covering, those 4 positions and the position in the street transportation department and any other miscellaneous operating costs.
So if the amount reduced from $6 to $4, what do you anticipate the revenue would be?
You can't peg that exactly, but we believe that we certainly will make our numbers that Mario is assuming in the budget, because these numbers are higher than that.
Okay.
So we don't have, Councilman Gallego raised the question of moving to $4, and we do not anticipate that throws the budget off. I think we'll still be okay with that. If you approve the hours and days that we talked about and the variable rates that we talked about, $4 is, remember that $5 or $6 was in one zone during certain times. So we don't anticipate that if you cap it at 4, we would lose enough revenue to cause us either not to be able to add the enforcement staff or not to be able to collect enough to balance the budget as you adopted.
But I would anticipate that wherever you were going to charge a 6 as the maximum, that's where you would be charging the 4. It wouldn't be spread on all zones.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct?
That's correct. And with this recommendation, we go back and rejigger the probably each of the zones to have the ballpark area that we talked about be the maximum 4, and then work our way down from there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, no, thank you. That last piece of information was something I was going to ask as well. I think there's value in actually reducing the number to $4, but we need to know what we're voting on, and we have to know that we could actually afford this transition. I do think that, you know, look, it's needed. It's been far too long, I think, since the city of Phoenix has actually looked at something like this. When it comes to parking meters, we have many improvements to make. We hear Councilman Gates mention it in his comments as well. Our parking meters, you know, we should have the credit card option on our parking meters, and the meters are important for all of the businesses in downtown. You know, depending on what the business is, they want time limits for some of the patrons. They want to be able to encourage people to come out, and for those who are coming to downtown Phoenix, you know, understanding that there's going to be an increase, I certainly am hoping that they do not consider it, you know, an opportunity for us to get more out of the customer. I do think that this is encouraged in part to create more of a multimodal city. We want people to start bringing light rail down. We like the idea of using public transit. I personally do. I'd like to see more people on bicycles. We have the bike share program, which we're still working through, and the list goes on and on. Carpooling, you know. So I think these are changes that again bring us into a modern time right here, not just for the city of Phoenix, but in what you see in big cities, large cities our size. In fact, I know some of the ideas come from some of our, you know, our similar sized cities throughout the country. So with that, I think we've discussed it. We have gone through the cards, and we're just waiting on a motion.
Wonderful. I move that we move to variable pricing with expanded hours and days and a cap of $4 per hour. So staff's recommendation with an additional cap at $4 instead of $6.
Okay.
One second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say
Oh,
aye.
ca-
Oh,
Chairman,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if I could just have a moment
of
to
course.
explain my vote. I appreciate the change that Councilman Gallego has suggested to $4, but I will be voting against this. I'm still concerned about the cost at $4. While I respect the comments that you made, Mr. Chairman, about trying to encourage more multimodal, in our city, and I'm supportive of that. I have real concerns, coming from my district. We're just starting to get people from District 3 to be willing to come to downtown to participate in the type of events that Mr. Neymark was talking about on a Saturday night, and I'm very concerned about the message that this could send to folks up in District 3 and other parts of the city, and may discourage them to come down at this point. And I'm also a little concerned about giving this just blanket authorization to staff from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Sunday. I think that should be more restricted in a way that would make more sense. But so I just wanted to get those thoughts on the record before we took the vote. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you, Councilman Gates. I would just also mention that in the briefings that I've had, my office has had with city staff, and in some of the slides that were shown here, shows that many of these changes, again, bring the city of Phoenix at par in many cases to the cities that are about the same size as Phoenix, and many that are much smaller than Phoenix. And so with that, every one of us will vote to represent our district and, of course, citywide. So with that, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
3-1. Passes.
I also think it's important to note that many of the garages also respond to price signals. So there are garages that offer free parking for at least portions of Sunday. And so people will have many options, and I think still be excited about coming to our vibrant downtown.
All right. So item 8, Downtown Phoenix Comprehensive Transportation Study.
Mr. Chairman and subcommittee members, we're asking for you to make a recommendation to the council to approve the Downtown Phoenix Comprehensive Transportation Study. This is another issue which has, number one, been heard once at the Transportation Infrastructure Subcommittee, and it's here today for your action. This is another issue that has had a lot of community engagement, over 40 public meetings. I'm going to just mention one thing that came up at the Transportation Infrastructure Subcommittee, which is that there was a little bit of concern about how some of the initial recommendations impacted the large venues that need to get lots of cars in and out for events like the ballpark and the arena. And we have met with the parties and I think come up with some creative ways to address those issues. And when Mark walks through the specifics, you'll see what we did to be able to accommodate that. So there are some, for those of you who were on that subcommittee, there have been some slight modifications to the recommendations to address those issues.
Thank you, Rick. Chairman Valenzuela and committee members, I just wanted to start off. This is a great partnership that we've had with Maricopa Association of Governments. They're not only a partner, but also a funding partner. We've been working together for the past close to 10 months or so, and up to a year. And we see this as a positive outlook for the future of the downtown. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark Belenchenko, our project manager on this.
Good morning, Chairman and committee members. This was an extensive effort that focused on an area bounded by McDowell Road to the north, Buckeye Road to the south, 7th Avenue on the west, and 7th Street on the east. In a nutshell, the study explored and analyzed potential roadway, transit, bicycle, and pedestrian improvements. A set of transportation recommendations for 3 set timeframes were developed using strategies and input gathered through a 3-tiered public outreach process that Rick touched on briefly. The overall goals are to effectively move people downtown. In the past, we really focused on the car. What we're looking at are effectively the movement of people downtown. And with that, to enhance economic development opportunities in evaluating current conditions and identifying transportation improvements. And all of these improvements would relate to the transportation network and respond to the downtown development and other activities that were underway downtown, additional light rail lines, and downtown development patterns such as ASU and other venues coming into the downtown. As Ray stated, this work began in July of 13, and we have culminated with a set of recommendations for 3 timeframes. With our efforts, we look to coordinate the study with other initiatives such as the Bike Master Plan, the Bike Share Program, the Complete Streets Initiative, the Adams Street Reactivation Study, completed by CED, Arizona State University expansion, as well as other light rail corridors coming into the downtown from the west and from the south. Other downtown projects were also in our planning efforts, future hotels, the Lures building, and other efforts. The Cancer Center Garage is also a major effort along 3rd Street that was coordinated into the study. The overall program in linking with these initiatives was, again, to make our streets more livable. The plan process illustrated here included these 4 phases. The first phase was a development of strategies, and that was the strategies were developed through a downtown stakeholder focus group process in September. That was where we initially set a number of groups that focused on specific items such as parking, downtown businesses, the ASU campus, and really focused on the needs, the specific needs of each one of those groups. From there, scenarios were created using these selected strategies. From there, we also looked at specific topics in the downtown. One that comes to mind is a potential light rail turnaround at 5th Street between Washington and Jefferson. That was analyzed in detail, and we worked very diligently with other city departments and the convention center staff. And so that was really an example of one of the special topics that was looked at as part of this process. All of these were linked together to create a series of phased improvements in 3 distinct time frames. The public outreach process included a 3-tiered approach. We started with the focus groups. We went into a series of 2 open houses. One in the fall, November we held 2, and then in the spring, outlining our draft recommendations. We also, on a pretty consistent basis, met with downtown stakeholders. Were part of presentations of all the downtown groups, such as the partnership, the Downtown Phoenix Inc. We met with ASU, the events management staff, the Suns and the Diamondbacks, and other downtown stakeholders on a very periodic basis. So meetings were held with community groups, downtown organizations, and other stakeholders throughout the planning process. Shown here on the graphic are a number of the strategies outlined and identified in the stakeholder process. A number of these were implemented in our recommendations, and they include directional flow changes from one-way to two-way, new capacity transit corridors, high capacity pedestrian improvements, message signs, gateway features. That was a very important item brought up from downtown stakeholders. A number of them said that they have businesses, patrons, et cetera, that said, you know, really, there really isn't a sense of place in coming to downtown, coming off the freeway. So gateway features is something that maybe could be implemented at specific gateway areas into the downtown. The series of phased recommendations focused on specific things in each one of these categories. Phase 1 looked at bicycle connections in downtown. There are a number of areas in downtown that are disconnected from other bicycle improvements. In addition, Phase 1 focused on the transition of one-way to two-way streets. Phase 2, which looks at years 6 to 10, focused on pedestrian improvements, the area, the sports entertainment complex, and then some of the items along the peripheral streets, namely the 7th Avenue and 7th Street. Phase 3, 11 plus years, long-term, focused on the completion of a transition to accommodate additional high-capacity transit service in downtown, light rail, and then the expansion also of our regional bus service. In addition, we would also look at a potential downtown circulator, which we feel with the added development in downtown would be a strong amenity in this area. If we look at the recommendations in Phase 1, there are some key projects. There was a strong voice among the downtown stakeholders and residents to move forward the transition of 3rd Avenue and 5th Avenue from one-way to two-way. So in our previous recommendation graphics, we showed them in the latter stage. But we feel that that is a strong, important project for the downtown community, and so we moved that into years 0 to 5. In addition, with this emphasis on the changing of one-way to two-way streets, we're also looking at 3rd Street and 5th Street north of Washington to become a two-way thoroughfare. With the connection of the bike lanes in the downtown area, right now there's a gap between the 7s on Washington and Jefferson. And we would look to close that gap and make that connection for bicycle users throughout the downtown. In addition, the bike share program would also be a part of this phase in moving that effort forward. This graphic depicts the comprehensive transit system that we have in downtown. The regional bus traffic travels on Washington and Jefferson and then up Central Avenue. It's very strong in the afternoon predominantly. This photo also illustrates the need to improve the shared pedestrian passenger waiting areas on the east side of Central Avenue, which is very problematic right now. I myself wait for buses on Central Avenue in the afternoon, and people are trying to come by you on scooters and walking, and it's really not a conducive, an area conducive to expanding transit. Also, we had talked about briefly 2 additional light rail lines that will be coming into the downtown area in the future. One from the south along Central Avenue, and then the I-10 west from 79th Avenue, and then also through the Capitol. Phase 2 recommendations would include improvements on 7th Avenue and 7th Street, which would improve the pedestrian environment along those streets. The area of focus would be between Roosevelt and Washington, and 7th Avenue and 7th Street, especially 7th Street, has a lot of uses right now that align that street. There's the biomedical campus, the schools and museums that we've had a voice of stronger or safer connections and crossings on that street. So we feel the emphasis on the 7s would be to increase aesthetically as well as the and safety-wise the pedestrian in those corridors. We feel that it's very important though to keep the capacity of 3 lanes in either direction on those streets, but we also would look at reducing the speed in the downtown area on those thoroughfares. With the increase of light rail in the downtown, the intersections of Central Avenue at Washington Jefferson will become problematic in the long term. We've been told through Valley Metro that there would be a train with these additional light rail lines of every 2 to 3 minutes. So we've also seen previously or recently that the traffic on Central Avenue has been moving off of traveling through downtown on Central Avenue and moving over to the Sevens and some other streets in the network. And we feel that that's going to happen more with the increased transit activity in the middle of the core. And so we really need to start planning. And so we will discuss a little bit further in the long-range efforts of how that will occur. In discussions, Rick talked about our ongoing discussions with the Suns and Diamondbacks. The transition of 3rd Street south of Washington would occur in this phase. We understand that we moved it to this phase because we feel that there's going to have to be ongoing effort with the sports complex to make the changes to 3rd Street from one-way to two-way, as well as some of the recommendations that we've outlined, and we'll show that in another slide on the Sunburst plan. So the long-range effort would move Central Avenue into more of a transit, bike, pedestrian emphasis. We would include limited access to the businesses, to the parking garage, and for deliveries in that corridor. But we feel that that's going to be an important item for future evaluation in the future. This is a 10,000-foot view study. These corridors would have to be looked at in more detail, but we feel that this could be a strong solution for the added transit activity in the middle of the core. Traffic would, in a limited basis, would be moved over to 1st Street, and then also over to the Sevens prior to moving through downtown. In addition, in the downtown area, we would also work with public transit on moving forward with a downtown circulator, as well as the 3rd Street Promenade, which is 3rd Street improvements north of Roosevelt. These items would be part of the long-range recommendations 11 plus years. The Sunburst plan, as we discussed previously, would be included in our efforts for phase 2. They would include safety for pedestrian flow, the access to downtown. We would include a lane on Washington Street that is closed right now for access to downtown. And then also we would include access for area residents at the Summit as well as the future ballpark apartments as part of our recommendations for the Sunburst plan. And with that, we would staff request that the Downtown Aviation and Redevelopment Subcommittee recommend moving forward with more detailed analysis of the strategies outlined in the study and to work towards securing project funding.
And Mr. Chairman, let me just clarify one thing, because I saw a stricken look on Councilwoman Gallego's face. There were some maps that were inadvertently attached to your packets, which were the old maps. The maps that you saw here on the screen had not yet been completed by the time we put out the report in the packet, because we had just had our meeting last week with the Suns and Diamondbacks and we're making the adjustments. So we intended to attach no maps in your packet, but it looks like the old ones got attached, and I apologize for the confusion. But the maps that we showed here on the screen are the recommended maps, which the basic changes were how the Sevens are treated, when 3rd Avenue and 5th Avenue are done, which is in the first phase instead of the second, and when 3rd Street south of Jefferson is done, which would be moving from the first phase to the second phase.
Thank you, Rick. Let's get to some cards here. The first card is Miss Stacy Champion. Stacy, marked in favor or opposed? In favor. I guess we'll find out in a second.
Thank you, Chairman and members of council. My name is Stacy Champion. As somebody who spends a lot of time downtown and advocates for sustainability, complete streets is not a foreign thing at this point. There have been numerous new studies from all over the country showing both huge economic impacts to communities, but also huge health benefits. I know Nashville, they champion complete streets as mainly a big health initiative for its citizens. So I think as we continue to get more vibrant downtown, as the ASU community grows, as we push to more modes of public transportation, just even looking at some of the public safety issues, the fact that marked bike lanes see a decrease of 50% of injuries to bicyclists. Some of those things are going to be vital for us to be a vibrant downtown. So I would just ask that you continue to educate yourselves if you don't know much about complete street initiatives and street diets, and look at some of the examples of other cities that have done a tremendous job with it. And I also am slightly disheartened by looking at some of the long, 11 plus years. I'm like, my God, I don't want to be old before these things happen. So like, I would like to see us, I understand the wheels of bureaucracy move slowly, but if we could try to catch up a little quicker to other cities, that would be awesome too. Thanks.
Can I ask a question? Oh, yeah, sure. So we are delaying some of the changes on 7th Street that will make it more pedestrian friendly from the first time this went to a committee due to traffic flow concerns. Do you think that's a good idea, or?
No, I don't. I don't think it's a good idea. I think waiting to, change the one ways to two ways is kind of silly. I think when you're only focusing on maybe people's whose concerns, major concerns, are about getting people out of downtown as quickly as possible, I think it's counterproductive to what we're trying to do with our downtown community. I can also tell you, having used, 3rd Street a lot and having worked on 5th Avenue, and my old office was there, people, I can't even tell you how many accidents I have almost been in. People are constantly going the wrong way anyway. I mean, and therefore, again, it comes back to being a safety issue. Why are we waiting to change it? I don't think that our main goal should be getting people in and out as fast as possible if we're really trying to build a vibrant, sustainable downtown, personally.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Councilman Gallego, just so you know, we're not recommending any delay in 7th Street and 7th Avenue. Those have been scheduled for that second phase from the first recommendation. So I just want to make sure you knew that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
But we are delaying 3rd Street.
3rd Street south of Jefferson is shifting from the first phase to the second phase in our recommendation.
And I've heard a lot of concerns about that from folks in the warehouse district in particular.
Feliciano Vera, marked in favor.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. As you all know, I wear a number of different hats: downtown resident, downtown developer, and chairman of the city's ad hoc bike and pedestrian task force. want to voice my overwhelming support for the work that Mark has undertaken, and really highlight the work that he's undertaken, as well as Rick and Ray. They've provided a tremendous amount of leadership in the right direction on this topic, and the way they've managed to integrate their work with both our work on the Bike Master Plan, the Complete Streets work, Reinvent Phoenix, among other initiatives, is incredibly important in moving the city in the right direction forward. This is a critical first step, and as part of this ongoing analysis process, I'd like to encourage the council and staff to continue to utilize interim design strategies as part of their ongoing analysis, particularly in the early years of implementation. These offer a very low cost way for us to test ideas out before we expend greater dollars in fixing permanent infrastructure improvements, and this works well with the strategies that we're proposing in the draft Bikes Master Plan, as well as strategies that have been employed on a pilot basis to put forth our Complete Streets initiative. So having said that, I want to touch on a couple of items that I've noticed, and that I would suggest we monitor on an ongoing basis. Connectivity to the surrounding single-family neighborhoods and the single-family neighborhoods to the south of the community is of the downtown core, south of Lincoln in particular, west and east of the Sevens, is of utmost importance. We have a tremendous amount of good quality housing stock, a lot of substandard housing stock, but we have a lot of good quality housing stock, and populations that are very vulnerable and oftentimes lack access to a a vehicle, and so pedestrian and bike accessibility for those neighborhoods is of utmost importance. And the way we get folks out on their bikes and walking to and from the downtown core is through those infrastructure investments. And so finally, I want to close by really noting that now we have a huge opportunity. We've got some plans in place. This subcommittee, as well as a transportation subcommittee under Councilwoman Williams' leadership, has made the recommendation that we explore funding alternatives for both Transit 2000 extension as well as for a street transportation CIP, and so I want to continue to urge the council to move that process forward so that we can really ramp up those efforts and those investments in our core at this critical point in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vera. Mark in favor, David Roderick. Downtown Phoenix Partnership.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. Again, like with parking, we do appreciate the work staff has done. Mark has been especially responsive, has come to a variety of our board meetings and so on, and really helped us through this process. Overall, we very much like the plan. We like the fact that it is a multimodal concept. It isn't just relying on automobiles anymore. I think that's very important for downtown. Many of the issues we have raised have been addressed, and I feel reasonable compromises have been reached on those issues, and we are very supportive of this. I think the only thing we would add, like Stacy, would love to see it all happen sooner rather than later. I know resources are limited, but I think all of these are very important, and obviously as we work through the details and of each of these, we certainly would like to stay very involved and supportive of this. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
What it would be highest on your wish list of moving up?
Probably the gateway features on 7th Avenue and 7th Street, creating a sense of entry into downtown. Some of the other things we were concerned about, the conversion of the one-way to two-way streets, especially 3rd and 5th Avenue, did get moved up, and so we really appreciate seeing that. But again, those gateways I think would be probably very critical for us.
Thank you. We have 3 cards not wishing to speak, but one marked in favor, Billy Shields, and Ralph Marchetta from the Suns. Now, Ralph, you are in favor? Okay. And Eric Emmert, in favor? Okay. I'll turn it over to my colleagues. Any questions or comments? Okay. Councilwoman Williams?
Thank you. Just to be clear, the 7th stay as they are. Okay. This is extremely important
Let me
to
just
the north
clarify,
area.
lanes, the number of lanes.
The number, you're not going to have them one way.
No, we're not, they're not going to one way, and we're not going from 3 to 2 lanes, as was one consideration earlier on.
That's the one that made me so nervous, because downtown is a wonderful place, and we want everyone in this city to enjoy it, including the people that live to the far north. And those are the 2 major streets that they use to get to downtown and to get out of downtown, and they hook to our freeway system, and I just think it is essential that we continue to recognize that, and that's enough said on that. I have a couple questions on landscaping. We have learned kind of the hard way. The previous landscaping that we have put along our streets is dead and gone. I know a few years ago we had a new landscaping plan. I don't think we ever implemented it, but I would really hope that you go back and find out what will live along our streets with the minimum of water usage that still makes them beautiful, makes them a pleasant area environment to be walking and enjoying the space. I guess my next question is, when you talk about a gateway feature, what are you talking about? I'm hoping it's not the Melrose. It got become so controversial. I want something good, but.
Chairman Valenzuela, Councilman Williams, when we talk about gateways, there are a number of things to pull from the toolbox. As you said, there's signage, there's art features. There's also, from the street side, we could lower the speed limits. We could enhance the pedestrian area on the, widen the sidewalks, include more trees. So there are some ways that we can work within the confines of the streetscape and not go towards a major structure as you're talking about in Melrose. So there are ways from, I think, with minimal cost to provide that gateway into downtown. We would also link to, say, there's been discussion, there was a large project about enhancing or improving Hance Park. And there was a gateway discussion talked about over the bridge. Maybe we could link with those types of efforts in creating those gateways into downtown.
Okay. And then it was brought up access for deliveries to the businesses downtown. I want to be certain that that continues to happen, that the businesses can get in and out and have their deliveries made. And the last thing we want to do is shut down a business or even reduce their opportunities. So I think that's extremely important that we pay attention to that. And then I guess my usual, do you have an estimate of the cost per phase? No?
Not at this point in time.
Before you actually implement this, are you going to bring it back and tell us and give us some options on what you're spending and where the money's coming from? And I know it's not going to be parking meters.
Chairman?
Well, we were going to take that extra $2, but now that that's gone, Mr. Chairman and subcommittee members, this, like any plan, this really informs our CIP as we move forward, and we will look for grants. We will, as we set priorities going forward, we will have good cost estimates for these. Some of them need to be designed before we would have a cost estimate for them, and you will have a chance to, fully weigh that against all the other priorities that are out there.
And if you go forward with this, are you going to have continued community input? Because I know the downtown gets very engaged in this process, but I don't know how many people you bring from the far north or the far south or the far west who want to come downtown, would more than likely do it, but would really, I think, appreciate telling you what they run into, the barriers they see because they don't come down that often, And it can be very intimidating for those who come down and get involved with the streets, the one-ways, the train. So I want to make sure that this city is enjoyed by everyone, as I said, and have them participate so that we address all of the issues.
We absolutely will do that. Thank you.
So I have heard some concerns from people in the warehouse district that they'd really like to have more connectivity with downtown, both vehicles, but also complete streets, that people will feel more comfortable walking in between down and town. And they have some concerns about sewer blocks, the very large blocks where streets have been removed. Several people disappointed about 3rd Street being delayed, as that would be an important source for connectivity. But then they asked if we could look at reopening 4th Street, which is now a parking lot. Is that something we've looked at? This was a new comment I just received after we made the changes.
It's a discontinuous street, I think. Chairman Valenzuela and Councilwoman Gallego, that is, it was looked at in the study, and I think we could look at that a little bit further, but that's a discontinuous street, and so we would look, we could look in the future at that as an option for circulation in that area.
As I'm hearing from many people who say we have more uses that will bring, they're more people intensive and bring groups such as students in to the ASU, and that they want to be able to walk, but that there's not a lot of options and very little interest on our very quickly moving streets like 7th Street as a crossing opportunity. Also that people feeling that the bike lanes there are not particular, and I have myself having biked across 7th Street have also found that is not the best possible option. So I think that's something that would be very helpful to look at. I've also heard some safety concerns, and you have as well, from people living on 7th Street and who are interested in more crossing opportunities within the 5-year horizon. So we do have a bridge in the CIP at the moment, which I guess what happened, I would like to see more crossing improvements within the 5-year horizon. So is that inconsistent with this plan?
Mr. Chairman and Councilwoman Gallego, no, that particular either at grade or above grade or grade separated would be consistent with this type of improvements that we're looking at for the long, for short term and long term. So any of those elements are going to be just another element that we're enhancing the plan.
Okay, so I prefer the at-grade improvements to the bridge, but I don't know that we want to commit yet. But would it cause any problems with anyone if we were to put some of those pedestrian improvements, which are already in the capital improvement plan, also reflected in this area? So that would be at-grade crossings would be my preference, but if it turned out the bridge was preferable.
Councilwoman Gallego, certainly we would add those as we move forward with the plan, and we can note those based on the CIP that we have right now. So we certainly can note those in this plan as we move forward with the overall plan for the downtown.
Wonderful, because we did have many meetings in neighborhoods like Garfield and Evans Churchill where I heard that as a high near-term concern, and since there is already a funding source identified for that, I would love to be responsive to those neighborhoods' concerns in this plan. So I will, when time comes, make an amendment to encourage those crossing improvements, and I think that will still be consistent with some of the issues that I don't think it will cause problems for our downtown sports teams, but we'll have more of a complete streets feel, because I really do feel that having a safe pedestrian environment is important for having a vibrant downtown, connecting people on the neighborhoods on all sides of downtown, and making sure that we support those businesses, because we have had a lot of businesses along 7th Street who have struggled, and this will be helpful in making sure that we have more flow and we can support that economic development. The change in speed limit will also be important in that area as well for improving economic development. We'll let Councilman Gates weigh in before I'm...
Okay. Councilman Gates, are you with us?
I am. Yes, thank you for the presentation, and I really appreciate the work that staff has done since our last meeting, working with those interested parties to make sure that the changes are made that will, again, make some of the things, make some of the positive changes downtown that people want to see without hurting those things that are working well. And in particular, again, working to not create as many disincentives for people outside of downtown who want to come for events. So I want to thank staff for all their work.
Thank you, Councilman. I do see a nice compromise. I appreciate how many times I've heard complete streets in this presentation by all of us on the council, and especially those who live and work and visit downtown Phoenix. I especially, and I appreciate all of our speakers, those who came out. Ms. Stacy Champion, I think, mentioned something very important. The focus shouldn't just be on how we get people out of downtown as quickly as possible. That is important, and it's very valuable for those who work in downtown Phoenix and they want to get home to their families. But let's focus on continue to create an inviting downtown through a multimodal with a multimodal city. So with that, we can entertain a motion if we have one. I believe you were gearing up for that.
Yes. So I move approval of the plan as presented with the amendment that we will add pedestrian safe crossings on 7th Street within the 0 to 5 time frame.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to drop off the call at this time.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Gates, for joining us.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, item 9, I know it's posted for discussion and action. I think we're very familiar, all the advantages that this has brought to the city, and I would just recommend that we do it as a consent item and move approval.
Second. Okay, I agree 100%. We have and this would go to the full council. Motion for item 9. We have a motion. We have a second. We have one card in favor, wishing not to speak, Mr. David Roderick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 10.
Mr. Chairman, Hank Marshall is here to discuss staff's follow-up on council's direction to pursue development of an office in Mexico. He promises me that he has a very brief, direct-to-the-point recommendation and presentation that he will make to you in recognition of the time limits, which we know are in the minutes that yet remain. So with that, no rush, Hank, but
Are you done yet?
You can start the light for me if you want. Chairman Valenzuela and members of the subcommittee, we're here to seek your authorization today to enter into a contract with Molero Alvarez to essentially provide consulting services for the city of Phoenix and Mexico City, which you have known about, which we've briefed you about, and additionally to enter into an agreement with the Arizona Commerce Authority to financially support the establishment of a trade office, an Arizona trade office in Mexico City that we fully intend to leverage. I'd like to applaud the members of this subcommittee, the other members of City Council, and the mayor for your past and continued support of our Mexico initiatives. It allows us to make opportunities relative to Mexico City a reality for our Phoenix companies. In general, the discussion as it relates to Mexico has shifted. It's evolved from some of the topics that we remember to being very economy-focused. Up until as recent as yesterday, the Arizona Republic ran a story entitled, "Mexico is the New China." That was yesterday. The Center for Economic Business Research predicts by 2030 that Mexico will be the ninth biggest economy in the world. The U.S. will be second, Canada will be 16th, and Brazil 6th. So in our little corner of the world in North America, we have major economic strength and power there. That all leads to the rationale for what we're talking about here today. The $26 billion worth of bilateral trade that takes place has kind of happened without anybody getting involved. It's been serendipitous in a way. How do we insert ourselves to make that more on behalf of our particular enterprises? We'd like to take trade relationships to a new level. Where they've been are certainly functional, but it could be a lot more. And we have significant opportunities that just have not been on the radar. We have not taken the leadership position in trying to advance them. And as the mayor has said, one of our objectives is to effectively double trade as it relates to Mexico itself. Entertaining the concept of a foreign office is very difficult. You need resources, you need a workable model and infrastructure. Our model, as we're talking about it, has got the funding. We have the collective will here to effectively move on that. We have got a very well thought out public-private model. We are thinking long-term. This isn't a one-year idea. We need to be in there for the long haul. And the infrastructure play, as I'll quickly touch on in a minute, is something we're going to leverage from the Arizona Commerce Authority to mitigate our having to get into that, our having to fund that and own that. Physical premises, as you would know, includes things like space, lobby, offices, conference rooms, location itself, paying for visibility, paying for access, and then paying for amenities, whatever it is you think you need or your tenants need. The Arizona office in Mexico City, their RFP was released last Saturday. They're taking a holistic state-level approach to what they're going to do. Have physical premises. They're going to have government relations that they're going to tend to. They're going to join associations and networks and make themselves kind of the overarching presence within that country. And they're going to have these very high-level points of focus, whether it's on sectors, contacts, FDI, trade, but at a very high level. They're not going to get granular. They're not going to have the needed focus on Phoenix that we believe we need to steward and shepherd. The goals, as were laid out by both the ad hoc task force in last year, as well as I believe City Council's mandate to effectively go do this, were to how do we expand export opportunities for Phoenix-based companies and make that a reality? Attract foreign investment to the extent that we can. In many instances, trade is a precursor to foreign direct investment. If I see my business doing well, my product's selling, I might want to be in that market. Thirdly, promote leisure travel and tourism. How do we get people to come here more than they already are? We have expanded air service. Let's leverage that. And then ultimately, elevate Phoenix's international profile and image by being in that market, being visible and present. We're up against places like Texas and San Antonio who've been there for 30-plus years and have a well-established brand and image in that market. Our program is going to take it down to a very focused level. We're going to, as you can see there, it's focused on Phoenix. We're going to drive issues that allow points of contact, that allow for trade, that allow for FDI, that allow for promotion, information gathering that is relative to our particular market. Distill it down from a rather holistic state level down to something that we can leverage and actually determine where the opportunity lies. The consultant scope of work is tactical. This is where we're going to take what the goals were down to what we can actually get someone to execute on. And it's going to be the identifying where can we find these opportunities? Where do they exist? And they're going to be vetted in such a way that it's not copying a telephone book and saying, here's people you ought to know. Identify supply chain opportunities. In many instances, supply chain talks about import exports. How can Arizona-based companies and Phoenix-based companies be more competitive by finding a source of supply in Mexico that might be better than where you're buying from China right now? It's closer. It might be cheaper. The delivery is 1/10 the time. We're also going to prepare and schedule and facilitate trade missions. We fully expect to have regular exchanges that will involve elected officials. It will also involve the private sector to further this. And we need to have a thing in place to facilitate that so it's not a demand on staff time. We're also going to work on a work plan so that we have a strategy. It's not something we're going to wing. What are we going to do in that year? What is that plan? And I think most importantly, 2 through 5 years, what's the strategic plan? What does 2, 3, 4, and 5 look like? Is it simply a repetition of year 1? Do we increase our footprint? Do we expand our services? What does that look like?
So Hank, given that we want to give time for the council members to have comments to us, I think you're going to need to jump right to,
Okay.
they will assume we've done good work on the RFP. I think we need to jump to the economics, who we've recommended, and the economics for the 2 things that are going to be before council here yet this month.
Okay, real quick, we had a terrific panel, unanimous, and a good consistency to kind of weigh in on what we've done. And they recommended Molera Alvarez, which is what we're recommending to move forward with today. We've heard loud and clear that we need to have metrics embedded in our system, so we're not just simply embarking on something that we can't be held accountable for. These type of metrics will be made much more particular when we get through the negotiating process and how we take these overarching ones embedded in the process. The operational summary, as we anticipated back when we first came to you, that it was going to cost about $200,000. We're estimating it will not exceed $100,000 because we're not looking for premises. We're going to leverage the ACA to do that. So we're going to say that that fund is going to be directly for service delivery. First 60 days, we're going to ramp up real quick. We're going to hit the deck running and effectively carry out our mission. And we're going to start working on our plan for 14-15 immediately. The summary slide here real quick. The green box is what the City of Phoenix is suggesting that we do. We're going to have representation in 2 markets, Mexico City and Phoenix, at a cost of $100,000 a year. The blue box. The Arizona Commerce Authority will have 3 people embedded on the ground in Mexico City with offices, with content, with programmatic activity that they will conduct at a cost of about $450,000 a year. What we are also suggesting is that red box now, how do we, with the City of Phoenix, support what the ACA is doing and leverage everything that you see in that lower left-hand corner? That comes at a significantly higher cost than we're estimating for our particular service. We are suggesting as a second recommendation that we also find a way for $75,000 worth of City of Phoenix funds, along with partner money, go to the ACA to allow us to embed ourselves in the ACA offices, to work collaboratively with them to carry out our mission. Today, what I'd like to leave with you in summary, and I apologize for my long-winded presentation today, is that we secure your approval to enter into a contract with Malara Alvarez to deliver on the mission of having a City of Phoenix representative on the ground to achieve our Mexico City objectives. Additionally, we'd like your authorization to enter an agreement with the Arizona Commerce Authority to provide financial support for their opening up of an Arizona trade office, which we fully intend to leverage to the fullest extent possible. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
We've had several discussions and hearings on this, and I'm prepared to just go ahead and make the motion that we recommend to full council staff's recommendation to do the contract with Malara Alvarez to do an IGA or whatever it is, an agreement with the ACA, and I would like to see you incorporate the additional partnerships with the downtown or MAG or other organizations, and don't limit yourself to just those.
We've got 10 more.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion.
A second.
We have a second. I was honored to serve on the ad hoc subcommittee. This is an investment when you consider that absolutely investment, $26 billion in annual trade between Arizona and Mexico, 110,000 jobs in Arizona, and when you consider that this is a very small number compared to what we are seeing out of our friends in Texas and California, this is Arizona, this is Phoenix leading the way, in Arizona as a team catching up. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward. Okay. So, call to the public, no call to the public. Future agenda items, we all have, most of us have that in front of us. There we go.
Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to see
Not at this time.
on there?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.